Thank you.
Yes. Okay. This is Senate Appropriations, and we're taking up the capital bill, page 82, and we have the chair of our institutions committee here. This is the second year of the capital bill, and we've already had a crosswalk in the sense that we've had to incorporate in the budget the general fund spending that is being proposed by our committee. And the only real change was, in the last minute was the request for the fishing derby.
Sure.
I guess you like walleyes and fishing and the fish hatchery, so that got incorporated.
Well, I like the fishing derby a lot for the same reasons. We liked all those visitors coming for the eclipse. Just bring all those people into the state. I mean, they say 5,000 additional people that come into the state, and I just think that anytime that you have that opportunity to bring those people in, maybe somebody will decide to start a business here, move here, whatever, and $30,000 is a small price to pay to put your name on that.
You do better if you put a little money into having another eclipse.
Yeah, that'd be a good story as well.
So I'm gonna have you put yourself on record, Senator Engel.
Yes.
And then we'll go through very quickly, the major changes, or what you'd like to focus, and we can take it from there.
Yep.
So,
So are you ready?
yep.
Well, thank you,
So-
Madam Chair. Thank you, committee, for having us in. We're not too far away from what the governor recommended. The House did make some substantial changes, which some of them they came back to us and wish that we would change back. One of them being on line number 3, the House had taken some. Hold on a second. The House had taken $450,000 or so of monies out of A&R, and actually I'm on the wrong section. I apologize for that one right there.
This is,
That only change right there is when we had to take $30,000 of cash and bonded dollars right there. The line there's the 455,000 was $30,000 higher.
that's where you found.
That's where I found the $30,000. We didn't shortchange them. We just had to, we had to get some cash out of them, and that's where we ended up putting it back in the bonded dollars right there.
So, line 3, which is statewide planning, reuse and contingency annual appropriation, that's bonded money.
That is bonded dollars. The next line you're gonna see, I'm gonna draw your attention to is line 18. The House had put in roughly $478,000 there. Where they got the bulk majority of that money, we're going to get into on the next couple pages. But the House had taken $550,000 away from agriculture that was going to match some monies for clean waters. And so they had a bunch of money sitting around, and they had parked it in that that line 18, and their thought process is that maybe they would start tearing down some buildings there. And our thought process is that at some point in time, we don't really know which buildings should be torn down. There were some recommendations that were going on, but why don't we, when we get to a point of when we're gonna sell that facility, let's have the people who wanna make the offer on the property tell us which buildings they don't like. And then we can negotiate the price to incorporate, helping to tear down those buildings instead. So to sit there and, just to say, okay, we're gonna tear down this building, we're gonna tear down that building. I think we could have used, and I think we have used $478,000 in a wiser way, other than just to,
I don't see any figure on line 18.
well, it was green in there, and I just wanted to bring your attention to it. There was $478,000 that we have redistributed elsewhere, and I'll kind of show you as we go through. So that was the difference of what the House made. So there's any of the green sections are differed of what the House had, and I just wanted to kind of show that to you.
I'm a little concerned about line 18.
It doesn't have any figures on it.
I know,
Right. Well,
but I'm also concerned about at a time when we're looking for campuses
right.
or correctional facilities and other facilities, that we're going through this, seems like giving the land back to Windsor.
Well,
That's where this is all leading, and it bothers me.
right. Well, I can tell you the institution committee is not at all in favor of any of that, of giving the land back to Windsor. In fact, we've had Windsor come in and the town in itself, and they proposed some different housing things in there, but they've never gotten to the point of, well, did Windsor agree with it? Do they even have any type of monies, lined up or any part of it? As of right now, the institutions committee's thing would be is that at some point in time, if you wanna sell that, show us the money, show us the higher bid of money, and we're not, the institutions and the Senate side isn't interested in starting to tear down buildings to try to appease somebody to buy the site, because we don't know what the next buyer is gonna want. Maybe the next buyer is gonna want every building that's there.
But I think what you're saying
I'm
is,
saying-
should we even sell in light of
And
the
you
various?
do anything there
Right.
until we've determined where we're going to place a forensic facility, a women's correctional facility. Well, I guess we've already determined.
Figured out
juvenile
to do-
facility,
There's a lot right
but
here.
other buildings
Shelters,
where you've got land close to the interstate,
Right,
It's
which
right.
is
Yeah, and
easier,
It's a big piece of land.
big piece of land with easy access to many things. Rehabilitative, particularly for a women's prison, can be done there. The
absolutely.
only problem is it's not near the, Chittenden County where the majority of the offenders come from, so.
Right.
That could be a minus, but I don't think. Personally, I would feel more comfortable if there was some. We're not doing anything at Windsor till we figure out where we're putting
Exactly.
the other facility.
And that's why that line's blank, Senator.
Well, but it doesn't tell me that. I don't
Right, well,
know what the language says,
Well,
because I think the people in Windsor think they're gonna,
the
Get it back.
acres.
Right.
This is all. And so I guess it says testing, demolition, salvage, dismantling. So it seems like we've actually gotten into the back end before we've even done the front end.
right, the house had put that language in there, and I just wanted to show you where I different from the house. And that we didn't agree with the house version of it, so they had in there that they wanted to start to dismantle that. The language is there on the line item, you guys are owed the explanation of why there's no dollars there. We didn't agree with what the house had proposed, and so there are dollars in there.
I guess what is being suggested though, before we make a decision to sell, we need to really look at what are the, building needs or facility needs of the state, and, that might be, a potential site, so center lines.
is there any language in that you have?
No, there's no language in there.
Was there any when it came over? from-
There was language in there, yes, that we struck
You
out.
took it out?
Yeah, we did, yeah,
So there's no language, for example,
right.
to examine the site for other potential.
No.
As the site for other potential uses.
No, there isn't.
No.
They have studied it, Senator, as far as with that, and again, we really, listening, early on in the year, to the pro town about trying to keep studies down to a minimum. And then trying not to use cash that we just don't have in a tight year to do studies upon studies. We have been very, very careful about allowing any type of like that, and that $478,000 that the house is parked in there.
I don't see any, is that being carried forward from prior to 24 then?
There was $378,000 that they are carrying forward, and they had recaptured and they had parked in there. Plus they'd added another $100,000
And
to it.
where would I find that? It's not on
Um,
18. There's nothing on 18.
So.
In
And that would
the,
be on line 146. Where we did some reallocations and transfers. You're gonna see on line 146
see,
where we
okay.
captured $378,180.
Okay. And that, has that been carried forward
That
from,
has been carried forward, so
23?
that was carried forward from,
2021.
21.
Oh, we've been carrying it for quite a
So
while.
it sat there for quite some time with that same purpose of what they decided that they were gonna do with another $100,000, which was to start tearing buildings down. And again, we just thought that we had more need for that money than to do that. If it's out there,
Well, when you're negotiating that, I guess what we're sort of expressing is, yes, let's not say we're testing and demolishing, et cetera, until we really have a sense of what, the needs of the state might be for that state.
your language is exactly where our language is as far as we move forward. Yes, Steve.
but there's no language.
But there's no line.
No, I mean, my language, when I talk to them as far as when they come back, and when they come back and say to
Should
us.
we, maybe we should add some language.
I think, we should.
I was gonna suggest that.
Because we did do that, and then Senator Ingles and I talked about it, and that was, the forensic facility.
Yes, absolutely.
And we had discussions and finally we said, look, we need it. How long, many years? And so we did put in some
We would
language.
welcome that language.
So
We
we
would,
could,
we would certainly welcome that.
So maybe we can do some kind of an amendment about,
Future years. They do have, you do have future, facilitate future, and then the improvements to facilitate future.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But we put that over on further.
We aren't taking any money. It's only language. It doesn't
Right.
affect, the money at all.
We would welcome that language very much so, to help our, to help,
We have a sense
how we
of what,
believe as well.
we talk about it more than you, but really, I think we know that there are multiple needs, including the forensic facility that we talked about. There's also the issue around the location of a women's facility, not that necessarily, but there may be other identifiable. For example, we just authorized in the T-bill $5 million to acquire land in Berlin.
Two
2 million,
two million.
sorry, 2. And so there's always sort of the question of should we, the extent we should need to buy land, when in fact we might have land.
Might have land available.
So we'll work up some kind of
But
amendment.
we would appreciate that, please welcome that.
All right.
The next changes that we're gonna see as far as where the house is or different from the governor's recommend is the house on line 69 from FY 24. They had taken $100,000 of the dam safety program. And we had, with all the problems that we're having in these dams and the fears of not being able to get in there and accept them, assess them the way that we should, we restored the $100,000 back in the dam, into the dam safety program. They don't have enough money as of what it was, and we just didn't believe
Yeah, but
that.
we just put in
Yeah.
money,
Right.
S-213 for dam safety and to capitalize the revolving loan fund.
Yeah,
That was the inspectors that we did. Yes.
Well, but that was related to dam safety. I don't know, and hydrology projects.
yeah.
That was in the governor's recommend.
The 500 was originally the governor's recommended. They've taken 100,000 out of it, and we restored the 100,000.
But,
Yeah.
you know, but the governor didn't put anything into the base budget for the dam safety division and the positions that review the dams, and we're like 121 dams behind in the review.
But we did that, we're taking care of that to a very large extent. with the
Yeah.
budget. So, this is bonded money as well, Senator.
Yes, it is. Yep, spotted money as well.
Is there a list of the hydrology projects in the language?
There was not, it was from a previous capital bill that, from the FY 24, that, and so it's not in this one, so they've taken the monies and we just restored it back to where it was. From what we passed last year.
All right,
So the next one gets a little confusing on line 72, and I'll lean on, my numbers guys here, but basically what it was is that we had $600,000 in cash, to go with Fish and Wildlife. And they moved that up, they added it to the,
oh, I'm glad to
1.344.
know the walleyes.
Yeah, they're safe again, yeah. So they added
Well,
the
that's
600.
good because
Yeah.
it's a fishing derby,
Yeah.
taking
That's what I'm
walleyes.
saying, brings people right into
No,
the.
no, walleye, do they fish for walleye?
Oh, yes, they do.
Walleyes, no, the fishing derby.
Yeah.
Oh, they-
Oh, yeah, they have a clown.
I'm glad to know there's a symbiotic relationship between those two
Yeah.
appropriations. Oh, wow. All right, so,
But wasn't that in the budget?
what?
The Lake Champlain? Oh, no, this is the wall, it's just.
Yeah, the walleye,
thing
yeah,
with the-
that's been an addition that we had in here for
All right, so you actually put more money than the governor recommended, into fish and.
Well, actually, we had $600,000 in cash that they
Well, you
had.
burn a hole in your pocket.
No, that came from the house. The house had moved it in there when they were really cabbaging around to get some more cash. They moved $600,000 into bonded dollars, and they moved that up, so that really should have been about 1.944. I'm gonna let you guys describe those numbers, you guys can do those a little bit better.
Well, you wanna put yourself on record and.
Of course. Scott Moore, Director Fiscal, just so, just to clarify one thing, the House had done a couple of different movements of money from the cash to the bonded sections. A couple of them were 600,000, this one actually happened to be $800,000 that was cash. So what the House had done was they trimmed the bonded dollars by about 244,000 and change. And then they moved $800,000 from cash up into the bonded section, make it look like the bonded section was an increase. And the process of moving it made it a little bit easier to see because there's one line item instead of two. But in the process of doing that, they actually ended up trimming 200 and some odd $1,000.
$244,000.
And so then the Senate went and added money back, $214,000 back to that, to make that $244,000 whole again. So there's a couple of different moving parts going on in that one line.
So,
And the reason why we did that, I'm sorry, Senator Kitchell, to jump in, the reason why we added the $214,000 in it, because it was gonna affect the Buck Lake, conservation camp, and it was the Kehoe State Park camps. And they were quite sure that they weren't gonna be able to open those camps this year, they didn't know how they were gonna do that. And we just thought it was very, very important that we keep those camps open. They've been there for a long time. And we've heard from time and time again, that people have stayed within the state, stayed within ANR, stayed within Fish and Wildlife, are actually people that went to those camps. They named off several, employees of there, and we just thought it was very, very important that we keep those camps open. And because you know what happens, they close one year, and they never open up again, and we didn't know what we would do with them.
so my question is, in looking at the money, the 2 years has passed with 3.122.
Yeah.
According to column G. According to F, we're now taking that and moving it. Or is that the House passed? I'm having a hard time. And we're moving it to 3.892, almost 3.9 million.
Because we had $800,000 of cash that was in there, so that number would have been about. That number would have been, from the governor's recommend, would have been about 4.89, it would have been about $3.9 million.
Well, that's what you've got.
Right, and then so we're back to pretty darn close to where we were.
All right, well, we know that the, park infrastructure, there's no question, there's a need for it. I was just
Yeah,
trying to figure it, okay. Questions about that? It's interesting because, we have the Keogh Park, camp, we have.
Buck Lake and just outside of Hardwick
Yeah,
on the hill, yeah.
no, I was just thinking about, we have the Dill building and so forth, people have been suggesting something to honor Senator Mazza. And the police barracks was one suggestion, and,
Never made a lot of sense.
no, but that was one
Seems like,
suggestion.
what about the new
Okay,
garage? Central garage.
central garage.
Yeah.
We always love his plows and trucks, I can tell you,
Yeah,
that's maybe.
that's a good idea.
Maybe that is a good idea.
That's a
We
good,
could do that in the.
Yeah.
Seville, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so now we're down to.
I just wanna draw line 74 to your attention. The House had $100,000 in there to study the Salisbury Fish Hatchery, the feasibility study, but we, as you know, we had $550,000 in the big bill to actually keep the fish hatchery open for 1 year's time, so we didn't. And there was gonna be 3 successive studies, 25, 26, and 27, that they were gonna do within their budget. So we didn't need the $100,000 to be parked there. That's why it's green. I just wanted to show you where we differ from the House on that. And we've used that money elsewhere. And the next line is gonna show you where a lot of that money went back to. And actually, where the availability of some of this money that showed that isn't there anymore. And I'll explain it on the next.
So when you conference with the House.
Yep.
You're gonna have, you spend this money in a different way.
Well, we did, but they're the ones that created the hole. And I'll explain that on the next line.
Well, I thought the governor did by proposing the closure.
Well, that as well, Senator. Um,
All right, so this is the feasibility study and you're taking, wait a minute here.
there was $100,000 that the House had proposed for feasibility studies. That language in itself right there isn't there because we have language in there to keep the fish hatchery open for 3 years, where there's $550,000 in the big bill for the first year.
So the question becomes one of, are you basically saying, fund it till the end of the water quality permit and then the facility closes?
Our intention is to the first year of, the language that we have in the bill is to fund it for the first year. And then if it was and in the bill, it says if it's a legislator's intent is to fund it each successful year, but yes, by the end of 2027, when the permits expire, there's two things that are gonna happen. But all the way up through there, they're gonna have to show us in those 3 years how they've kept production of fish stock up or at the current levels or higher. And also, where they are as far as with the permit process, but at the end of 3 years, there's gonna have to be making a decision by the legislature of whether we are going to apply for those permits or whether we're gonna close it down. But the intent of it is that if they decide to close that down, which we're not gonna make that decision, the legislature will make that decision. If they do decide to close that down, we will have no loss in any type of fish production or fish stocking because it's mandated in there that they keep at the current levels or higher. And so I thought it was very, very important that, whatever they wanna do after that, for that building.
After 3 years.
After 3 years and
Now
after
we're
the
talking
permits
about a very
expire.
large, I've heard as much as 10 million and something for a replacement. Unless
Absolutely.
you can figure out some alternative options, which you're talking about.
And
How to get the fish stock and.
exactly, and we have that in the language, they need to bring that forward, they need to show us for the 3 years. And then the number that we had, to be fair, I don't know where the governor had come up with it was a $12 million worth of savings, because we got the number from A&R to keep that, fish hatchery open, it was gonna be about 2.5 million, maybe about $2.5 million, I think, for the 3 years to keep it open. And, or maybe 2.1 million to keep it open for the 3 years, but we do have 550,000, as you're aware, in the big bill to keep it open for the first year. And we'll have to find money the next year and the next couple of years.
Okay.
So was maybe the $10 million was for the repairs?
It could very well be. It
Replacement.
could very well be. I didn't have a conversation with them as far as to where they were showing the $12 million savings by closing it.
I believe that was part of the, commissioner's argument for closure was, that the replacement was going to be fairly expensive, like a $10 million.
Yeah.
Probably in there competing with the forensic facility, the women's facility, and probably a number of other,
It's gonna be a,
what,
gonna be a tough vote.
yeah.
Right.
All right, well, we'll keep going here.
Well,
Water
online-
quality grant.
Yeah, on line 81, so the House had originally taken this money out, what this is match money grant right here for water quality. And the reason they took it out was that they didn't think that A&R, the Secretary of Agriculture was being responsive to them. And they had a subcommittee on this, and they just said, well, you don't wanna come in, you don't wanna testify, which they said different, that they were available to testify, so they took the 550 out. Well, they no more took that 550 out and passed the bill, they come running to me as fast as they could, and said, we made a mistake. Please, the first thing you do is put that 550 back in there.
That's the House people.
That's the House people, that was Chair Evans that had said that. And so that's made a lot of availability, so when I found you about why there's some lines that are empty, that's where a lot of that available money's come, that we had to take that monies back and refund that 550. So that's where we have some empty spots on there, and then we changed
Yeah.
some,
It's too bad you can't spend it twice, Senator Ingle.
Yeah, well, I was hoping we could, but I knew it would get by this committee, so,
Oh
that's
my
what that
gosh,
is.
the cafeteria, you wanna give them some tables and chairs?
Yeah, so, on the line, the next line is,
Yeah,
line
question on that.
129, so that money was baked into, line 1 on this bill of 8.5 million, so really there was $8.4 million. And the reason why they baked it in there was because they were really afraid that FEMA was gonna have a real hard problem about replacing the chairs, and oh my God, because they ran into a problem that was a different situation. When they went and replaced the money, there's two things. Our committee says, well, if you're gonna spend $100,000 on chairs, let's not put it with BGF, let's get it back on its own line item. And let's have the sergeant of arms do that, because that's what the sergeant of arms is supposed to do, and let's have transparency. Let's show that this money is gonna come back out there, we don't need to bury it in there, let's show where it's at.
Well,
We have checked with the
So are
sergeant,
you?
Yep.
So are you instructing them to buy chairs with this?
they were BGS, well, yes, that was what the intent of it.
I gotta tell you that the flow of traffic and people through that cafeteria is horrid.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather us pay attention to how people get through and how that's used and give somebody some flexibility to reorganize the way that goes through, because to get through a cash register at lunchtime in that cafeteria
Yeah.
is a nightmare.
Well, you don't have to suffer too often because I bring you lunch.
I understand that, and thankfully you do, so I don't have to waste my time up there, but it's terrible.
No, it is, Garth, it's just, well, but in the meantime, the tables and chairs need to be replaced.
Why?
I don't know.
Well, it was,
You can't
from what
get
it was
through the
told
lunch
to
line
me,
to use
this,
them.
Basic should be replaced in this building. It's the damn chairs that people that visit here in most committee rooms, as well as witnesses, have to sit in. It is embarrassing. I don't know of
Those
any
metal
state house in the
folding chairs.
nation
Yeah.
with metal folding chairs in a committee room, and it is embarrassing. So I don't care that those chairs are horrible. There should be chairs in the hallway. People that are elderly coming and visit can't sit down anywhere.
Benches.
There's a windowsill next to my committee door
All right,
that is the only chair.
if you. So let me, we'll have a follow-up discussion, we may be able to take care of your, although I did find it interesting that the reporter who was sitting there while we were doing the budget on Friday talked about sitting on that bench and our rear end was getting numb
Yeah.
before we finished, so.
I would just say, in the cafeteria, I give the sergeant at arms some ability to
Flexibility.
to take a look at the cafeteria, see how it's used, and
No, we have got, I need to go back because we've actually, and I'm sorry, Senator Ruth isn't here, but we've been looking at the whole configuration of the State House. And so to me, that's part of that, the committee room issue. And so,
But is there a way to give some flexibility to the chairs? I'm agreeing with Senator Sears. I've
is
graduated,
this bonded money?
This is bonded, yeah, this is bonded money, yes, it is.
Um, um. We need to have some more discussion about an amendment we might want to consider. As it relates to a contingent appropriation, and I think maybe this could be somehow, we could look at.
And it's exactly why we broke it out to start the conversation. We didn't think it should be buried in there, it
Oh, you
wasn't,
started a conversation, all right.
well, then that's, we are happy about that. So we are very, very happy about that, so.
All right. Well,
The next thing is, we just have a bunch of reallocations, nothing there, we found another in FY 25. We found another $2.6 million that we have certainly baked into the budget, but the next line you're gonna see that we're differing from the House is where we had to, where we got the 30, again, this goes a lot, lines where, line 3, this is our little money transfers where we had to get on lines, 212, this is where the $30,000 come from LCI. So you're gonna see the two lines where we had to take some cash and we put it in bonded on line 3. And then, but the end result is we had to get.
You had a little extra bonding, so you just used
Right.
bonding and.
We made a deal with BGS and said if we could take a little of your cash, we're gonna make it up in bonding, but we need $30,000 in cash money for the LCI tournament. So that, we made BGS whole, but we needed $30,000 in cash for the LCI. So that's kind of, it's, one change made 3 different changes on this sheet. So that's where we ended up with that.
Okay. Questions in terms of moving to a very, so there's not, relative to the house, then the 30,000 that you're adding, the 550 they agree with, but how you got it, they'll have to agree with because they didn't have it. And then the other discussion would be, they don't have the forensic language, which, I have shared with, I think Senator Sears and Senator Lyons, that basically says the planning would be done this year, and then the capital bill, when it's presented for FY 26, 27.
And we have that we have the language
And that-
in there.
Yeah, and that would be something that is not in the House version, but when we talked about the forensic bill, we said, we've been talking about
Right.
it, this time we really mean it, we want it to move forward, and I guess it would have if the wing at the psychiatric hospital, if we hadn't hit foot wall on that option, so that would be, I just wanted to let the committee know that when we passed the forensic bill out, we were concerned about the statement of intent and, a year, and the year that it was cited, we stripped out a specific year, but put in this language instead, saying next year's planning, work with your departments and around the needs of that particular population, and then build it into your capital plan in the subsequent fiscal years.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that we had crosswalk from one bill here over to the institutions committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, Senator Sears.
Yeah,
And Senator, sorry,
Well,
sorry. You have your
I'm
hand up?
wondering, on 190 State House expansion design document,
Yep,
150 grand, what are we getting for that?
that, what are we getting?
Yeah.
That is, the design as far as to, what the, Joint Legislative Management Council agreed to was to, get the plan started to do the,
It's maybe as a member of the Joint Legislative Management, well, we had different options. Obviously, some of them came with very large price tags. What this does is do the upgrades so that we meet the ADA requirements. And also the section over by the loading dock would be kind of an entry because of the security issues. And so that's what there was a very large brand, add a floor to the cafeteria and whatever. But the decision was to really do what we felt we needed to make the State House accept ADA compliant and deal with some of the security, but that's what.
and that money is parked there, Senator Starr from FY 24 that we passed last year. So it hasn't been expended yet, but it is still to do those plans.
Michael,
Oh, Michael wants to do neonates.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to see it for a minute, and what about the Newport, the replacement of the boiler?
The boiler is, 3.5 million, if I remember it correctly, and that is going to be something that's going to be done this year.
The house is all blank,
Oh, hold on a second, where we are with
it's
that.
under 192.
Well, it might be because it was cash, Senator Starr, and it was cash and they moved it into bonded dollars. So it's $3.5 million that they took from cash to move to bonded.
Who is that?
The house, I apologize.
Okay, I didn't know if it was BGS.
No, it was 3.5 million in cash and they moved it to bonded dollars.
Yeah, if you look on line 17 of your spreadsheet, you'll see the
3.5.
3.5 there for the boiler.
That's wood,
Because that is wood now, right?
Yeah. Well, they were using chunk wood before and then you had to have people that were, had to keep it filled and all that, and that's gone really, so now they're gonna go to an automated
Oh,
wood boiler type system.
Oh, the conveyor.
Like a drive,
I think it's gonna be,
drive ships.
it's gonna be one or the other, it's definitely a wood product.
Can I ask more boiler questions?
Yes, I knew this would precipitate something.
So the ag environmental laboratory, at one point they were talking about putting that on a wood system, but,
That's gonna be a wood system boiler. Yeah, absolutely.
um,
I don't think we have, Senator Perkins, I don't think we have any boiler replacements that I'm aware of that aren't wood. I think they're all wood.
the veterans home, because that used to be wood, but I don't think it's working, their wood system, so I wondered if,
Oh, they have
line 117.
geothermal.
well, I guess maybe the veterans home, I'm thinking the one in Whitewood, Wisconsin, that's the hospital,
Right.
but the home is
Bennington, yeah, Bennington,
But
and it's geothermal.
Yeah,
you know,
but it's a boiler, so it wouldn't be a boiler
well, I believe there was a boiler there before the June, before the June. Right? I don't know if that's what
it's
that's.
$4.5 million.
Yeah, it seems
It's
that,
a big deal.
yeah,
Yeah.
What, how big a generator do they have?
That's what I wonder, like,
Oh,
you know what that
No, they
boiler?
haven't.
What line, Senator Perkins?
This is 117.
117. That is from, well, it's actually from FY 24. So it's on an FY 25 bill, and I'm gonna.
They already did it.
Yeah, well, we're in the process, right, it's something we passed last year that, I think it's completed. Kate, can you help us out with that, do you remember?
Veterans home is, we're not, that's not our project.
Okay,
At least to my knowledge.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, that,
I can find out, but it's something we passed last year, yeah.
yeah, that's money that was appropriated to the veterans home. So you'd want to talk to Melissa Jackson or someone from the veterans home about how that's going.
All right, and.
So there are like problems sometimes with that.
Record, so we know.
Sorry,
Yeah.
for the record, the voice is Damian Leonard from the
Yeah,
Office
thank
of
you.
Legislative Counsel.
Thank you. Okay.
So there are like sometimes when you have the FY 24 stuff behind there, something we passed last year, and so we don't focus a lot on it. If you have any questions, just let us know, we'll get an answer.
Okay.
And then line 124, Green Mountain Drive facility upgrades. You're recommending $1.5 million. Was that because you moved some money around there?
That one right here, Department of Labor, 1 point, yes, that was something that, some money was moved around, trying to think what that was, can you remember?
That was the government recommended 1.5.
Yep,
And I'm not sure, that wasn't anything we had changed around, the government recommended 1.5. And part of that probably came from the additional money from reallocations or other ways, due to cash being fungible. But that was just 1.5 million the governor recommended, and the House concurred with that recommendation, and the Senate concurred with the House's concurrence.
Message.
Question.
Yeah, the reason I asked that Department of Labor, I thought that building was owned, I thought the federal government owned that building.
No, that's a state building.
It is a state building
Yeah.
now. I think there was a time it was financed.
There is, I don't know if it may have been financed by the federal government.
Mhm.
I know a lot of the financing for the department's operations still come from the federal
Okay.
government, but, the building is a state building as
Is
far
it?
as I know.
All right. Yes, who had a question? I'm sorry.
I just had a general question, okay? On the capital bill, it seems like there's some things that just would be in the agency's budget, but they're here. And I just didn't know, like Skidder Bridges, I always assumed that was an FDR program and that they just did it in their budget, but the money comes through the capital bill, like.
yeah, it usually will come through, capital bill will fund it through the, Fish and Wildlife or through A&R. And so, yeah, so that's.
So it's just traditional, like why would we fund it through a capital bill and not through their budget? Or like the A&R pollution grant, something like that.
Some of it has to do with just if it's a capital project, so something that depreciates over a 20-year plus period. That it gets funded in the capital bill, and there are some things that are capital project adjacent that are in here as well that maybe aren't that sort of depreciating asset, but are related to it, design documents, work that needs to be done for site prep, things like that. But you do find like forest parks and rec roads and drainage work is in here. I think it's just where it's found a home historically.
What about the 201, the municipal pollution control grant? So that's a lot from last year.
Yeah,
Is
that's,
that a capital?
it's infrastructure projects.
You're putting in a.
Yeah, I think rather than breaking out a separate pollution control and floodwater infrastructure bill, you're putting it in the capital bill because it's a capital project. So yeah, kind of, you can think of this as similar to the T-bill, the way there are structures in the transportation bill because they're related to transportation facilities. There are things here that they didn't belong in the T-bill. They weren't an annual general fund expenditure, it's a depreciating asset. So rather than creating a new bill, I think historically they were dropped in here.
Okay. Makes
So,
sense.
and I would invite any of my colleagues to add more if they know more.
Yeah, well, we got into the debate in terms of what you can put in, because we used to have like the engineering come in the side. That used to. Now they move back to general fund, but it's part of bonding and much more reviews. So you can argue it either way, and a lot depends on where the money is. Yeah, it's perhaps not as pure as we might consider. or-
Yeah. But on 25, and I don't know if I missed this, on the women's correctional facilities, so this 13 million, is that for? I guess that's still just planned.
We're starting to park some money. And that's what we're doing. We're just parking money. Well, it's nothing that's, you're gonna see that line get carried
We're
forward.
just anticipating.
Yeah, anticipation for it, so you don't
There's
have,
gonna be a lot more than that.
there's gonna be probably up, well, I don't wanna say the number, but I'm gonna say probably upwards of 100 million. That's a dangerous number to say out loud, but there's gonna be a lot more money sitting there before it's all said and done.
Other questions, if you don't have? Other than we probably will work out some kind of an amendment relative to the Windsor property.
We would welcome that, very much so, because, I think the House is taking a quick look at our bill as we passed it, and I think that was one of the areas where they probably wanna do what you don't wanna do. They probably wanna put some money back in there to start tearing down some buildings, so we would welcome that language very much. I can't remember if there was something, one other,
The naming.
the name, okay, yeah. They had, in the bill on the House version of it, a lot, pro tem about what you had said about naming some buildings. They had in there where they wanted to start a whole new committee and move it to the legislative branch about naming buildings and state buildings and all that. And we just didn't really think that that was something that we wanted to do. We wanted to keep that within the capital, within our control in the institutions committee, so that we didn't want somebody else to be naming our state buildings when we could do it ourselves when it's all said and done. And the reason why why they were nervous about it is because it's political. And they didn't want us to tell anybody no. And I'm sorry, but sometimes you do have to say no, and sometimes you have to give your reasoning for it. And that's why we struck that language out of there. So other than that, the two, I don't know if there will be
Well,
more.
then it just begs the question about what is the mechanism for
Right.
kind of naming right now? It used to be the libraries and then that got changed.
Well, then there was the capital complex, committee or group that was
Right.
looking at. But it depends on what the.
You just struck.
We just struck the language out. So my point being is that we're gonna very much welcome the language that you wanna give to the Windsor facility. And I was just pointing out to whatever the House had disagreed with, so that would help us with our negotiations with the House for sure.
We've been very, very judicious about what we name.
Yes, we
We
have,
have,
and we've been,
so, otherwise, everybody would have their favorite legislator maybe, or whatever. Okay, other questions for Senator Ingles on this? Thank you, for coming in.
No, thank you, thank all of you,
And we'll
appreciate it
work
very
with
much.
Damian on some kind of, amendment relative to the Windsor property.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I think just as long as.
Flexibility on
The
the
idea
chairs.
that we should do nothing with any property in the Windsor site until after we've made decisions about where to locate various facilities that are the pipeline.
How.
I don't know if pipelines legislative line.
How Windsor might be a part of the planning process, so you just.
Well, they're here's the problem, they're insisting we were a prison town for
Yeah.
100, 200 years or whatever. So we've already done our part, we want the land to make.
well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a prison.
No,
There are lots of things that the state needs,
Could
and it's
be.
right on the interstate.
be a lot of things.
Yeah, it's a lot of towns have been close
Okay,
to a lot.
well, we'll work on it more. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you guys taking the time.
I'm going to move on to our next bill because I don't want to keep like
Yeah.
council bopping in and out and,
I just,
um,
it hasn't, felt one thing he worked for years on is that new drawbridge.
Oh, yeah,
And.
we've talked about that several times.
So,
And it's in it,
and it's in, and on the way, that drawbridge, he spent years working.
Yes, we've had some conversations about it. It's just what is the right mechanism and the extent to which anybody, any of our departing colleagues get something named for them.
Well, he got a bridge up there named for Coon Smith back in the day.
I thought you were gonna say he has a bridge name for
we
him.
have to deal with the Campion roundabout.
Yeah. So we're going on, and where is Senator Stark? Well,
it's on Copeland.
oh, that's right. Thank you. And we'll,
He is.
I think this one,
he
no
no
longer
longer
has
has
the appropriate.
so, are you, I hate to put you on the spot, but you're used to that.
You're on.
And Rick is on the committee. I know that, Senator Collin was the reporter of the bill, but we thought maybe, we wouldn't pull him out of committee. And maybe we got to run through this, this bill. We've been getting lots of emails on this. So Mike, we'll, let you run through the bill with us and thank you for coming.
Okay,
So
sure.
realize you've been kind of in and out and we're a bit behind.
Do you want a broad overview of the bill as a whole, or just what I think the appropriations issues are?
Well, I think we have the purpose of the bill obviously is to protect our pollinators.
Yeah.
And, so this gets into, pesticides that pose a risk to that, population of insects, bees, et cetera. And,
So it does-
the question comes, the purpose and then of the financial impact.
Okay, so it does two main things. It prohibits the use of treated seed that has neonicotinoid pesticides applied to it. And that prohibition goes into effect in 2031. The other thing it does is it prohibits certain outdoor applications of neonicotinoid pesticides, so spraying for when a crop is in bloom, certain corn, soybean, and other cereal crops, to ornamental plants, certain kind of leafy crops, and then it removed a prohibition on application of neonicotinoid pesticides into turf. Turf is defined as closely mowed grass. Under both of those prohibitions, the prohibition on treated seed and the prohibition on outdoor application, there's something called an opportunity for an exemption order. For someone that's affected by the prohibition to apply to the Agency of Ag to get an exemption to use one of the banned neonicotinoids for the purpose that they need it for. As the bill passed the House, that exemption order was a very rigorous process. It required the Agency of Agriculture to do detailed evaluations of how the pesticide would affect pollinators, detailed evaluations of whether or not there was an emergency that required the use of the pesticide, detailed evaluations of effectively the seed industry and whether seeds were available or not to farmers. And the agency said that that was going to require them to hire new people because they did not have the resources available to do those detailed evaluations. What the Senate Agriculture Committee has done is it has changed that exemption order process. Instead of it being an Agency of Agriculture detailed evaluation of the various components, it instead follows what New York is proposing to do and what Ontario already does. It requires first that the farmer have what's called integrated pest management training. When to use pesticides and when not, and when to use pesticides as the last resort. So that's the first thing the farmer or any other person seeking the exemption needs to do. Then they have to fill out what's called a pest assessment report. And it sounds like it's egregious, but I've got Ontario's here. It's 4 pages long. You just fill out this pest assessment report, the agency reviews it and determines whether or not the assessment is there. The farmer would have the responsibility, or the other person seeking the exemption would have the responsibility to do it. It's not the agency's responsibility to do it. And a farmer or other person could use an agronomist or other special service to do an assessment report like this kind. So it moves the burden from the agency to the applicant for the exemption. The agency still has the authority in the Senate Committee on Ag's proposal to put restrictions on the use to protect pollinators. So it is not simply just, you can do whatever you want. Once you get the exemption order, there can still be restrictions on the use of those.
So, Senator.
You're probably going here, but I just am wondering about the emergency itself. What would constitute an emergency? I was looking for a definition.
There is a definition of agricultural emergency and environmental emergency. An agricultural emergency means an occurrence.
Could you tell us
What
what
page?
Page 5, line 11. It's an occurrence of any pest that presents an imminent risk of significant harm, injury, or loss to agricultural crops. And an environmental emergency is an occurrence of any pest that presents a significant risk of harm or injury to the environment, or significant harm, injury, or loss to agricultural crops, including any exotic or foreign pests that may need preventative quarantine measures to revert or prevent that risk as determined by the Secretary.
Is that Ontario language?
It's similar to New York's language.
New York?
New York has the emergency language in its exemption order process. Ontario's is basically do the training, do the assessment, and then make a case for why it's needed. They don't really reference emergency.
And that's very similar to that too.
It's similar to Quebec as well.
So we're modeling on.
We're modeling on Ontario, Quebec, and New York.
So can I ask, under this language, could an emergency include a pest that has been around for years? So nothing changes in the status quo, except that now they have to call it an emergency, but they had the same pest they've been using neonicotinoids for.
Yes, it's a possibility. Say, when the prohibition on treated artificial seeds goes into effect, the farmer switches to one of the alternatives, and using Quebec as a example, farmers have either switched to untreated seed or to what's called diamide treated seed. And there's a possibility that, and right now there's been no shown issue with that. Yields are the same, there haven't been any pest issues. There have been some need for exemption orders because in certain places, the untreated seed or the diamide treated seed hasn't been effective against certain pests. So, and it's long-term pests. It could be the corn maggot or something like that. And so the farmer or property owner applies for that exemption order and gets the ability to use the otherwise prohibited, even if it's more intermediate.
And they can use that in perpetuity?
No, it's only available for a year.
And they apply
And
again?
if they need it again, they have to apply again. If they show the same pressure, they have to show the same emergency, they have to do the training, have the assessment report, etc.
So, is there a line, I'm sorry, you.
I was just gonna say, it's an odd way to use the word emergency, but in any event.
Center line.
Yep, so, I'm looking at the use and sale, and it has no person shall sell or offer to
What
sell
page are you on, please?
on page 6. So a retailer or distributor could apply for the exemption.
So right
How
now,
would that, I mean, just trying to sort out how that would work. If, the only thing you can buy in the state, if you have a retailer who has an exemption.
Well, most of the exemption order is set up for an exemption from prohibition. If a farmer is gonna need the seed or the neonicotinoid pesticide, they will be able to get it from outside of Vermont underneath the exemption.
So there's no exemption order?
There's
for
no
this
specific
sale?
exemption order for sale.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Senator.
What is the timeline for the New York
But it says,
implementation of the?
So the seed in New York is 2029.
Yes, but New York was 2027,
mm,
and, they changed that.
Just in February.
In February, they changed it to 2020.
Why? You know, why?
I'm not real clear on why they changed it. I can tell you that the worry amongst farmers here is we have 90,000 acres planted in soybean.
Right.
Lot. We're so small that, you know, Ontario's got 1.5 million acres. New York's got 1 million acres of corn. And the worry is that we're so small that, something happened,
Sure.
we couldn't get.
But why not just line up with New York? Why do 2 years later, 31?
This does have a component that lines up something.
I think only in New York is later. So if New York is 29, we're saying 31, unless New York pushes it past 31, then we'll be with there.
Got it.
So the committee talk about just lining up with you.
We talked about this over and over and over, and this is what, was produced.
Other questions?
I just want to go back to the question on page 6. So it does say, the secretary may issue a written exemption for subsection A. It does include the sale thing, so I'm just wondering how that sorts out.
Well, I think honestly, it's
It's not gonna happen?
gonna be in conjunction with the person applying for use.
Okay,
Because you, to do a pest assessment report, like they do in Ontario, you have to identify the acreage where it's gonna be used. You have to identify the pest threat to that acreage, the crop that is at threat. It is not about the retailers'
got it.
economic losses. It's about the need on the ground to control the pest. And so if there's gonna be an exemption order for sale, it will be in conjunction with an exemption order for use.
I like the term economic place.
Economic poison? Oh,
Every economic voice has.
It's economic work.
So when pesticides were first regulated federally in the 50s, that was the federal term, because it was the most economical way to grow something.
Um,
And
so you wanted the most virulent, right? So
They also liked superphosphate back then too.
but over time, the feds have changed the term, the pesticide, which includes insecticide, fungicides, nematicides,
That's kind of a catch-all.
pesticides are kind of the catch-all, but Vermont rule had used economic poisons and never changed. So Vermont has kind of embedded the term economic poison into its statutes.
So the reason we have this bill is because of, in the underlying bill, there wasn't appropriations. That,
There was never a specific appropriation. There was, in the fiscal note from as passed the House.
That was fine.
When it passed out of House Agriculture, the Ag Committee said they needed 3 to 4 new positions.
The agency that,
Yeah.
yes.
And that's what the fiscal note says, because that's what, well, I don't know if it actually said 4, I think it said 3.
It's a 3, yeah, we, yes, noted that the agency
I need
forecasted
to put
those.
you on the record, please.
Sure, temporary joint fiscal
Yeah,
office.
okay, thanks.
Yes.
So that's why it's here, because the fiscal note said that they needed resources.
On the other hand, the ag committee changed the process and therefore reduced that workload burden that
Right.
would have generated, the need for the positions. Is that?
Yeah.
In summary, what you did?
I can't say that it will eliminate all new work, because there is this exemption order that they will have to.
Oh, you all right?
Yeah, it's a stinger type thing.
Your rotator.
Yeah.
I,
Um,
I just go back to the emergency piece and that, just to give you an idea of the economics for the farmers involved. A bag of corn is generally about 80,000 seeds. And it's exactly 80,000 seeds, whether it's small seeds, it doesn't matter the weight. And the testimony that we got is that will do 2.5 acres, 80,000 seeds. And so we had a lot of farmers that were over 1,000 acres, some up as high as 2,400 acres of this. And it's $400 to $450 dollars a bag. So 1,000 acres of corn is $160,000. So we had, if you have somebody with, so if you're faced with a catastrophe, the question for us was, what, and you're the farmer, what do we do with them? Do we just let them, and that's just the seed involved.
Right, but I'm thinking ordinarily, one farmer's bottom line doesn't constitute an emergency. You know what I mean? It's bad for them, maybe we try to address it, but the language of emergency or catastrophe at the governmental level
Well, it,
is usually
if
broad-based.
if you, the choice was, and we followed the same process that New York, Ontario.
and they use that term emergency.
They do in New York, yes.
So
Yeah,
we're,
I just think it's kind of weird because there might in fact be no change in the status quo other than.
compelling me.
Well, a lot of times these, the corn maggot and the other worm that is most common in this, remain dormant and can be present and don't. And then they just show up and people are in trouble. And the question was, how would you deal with that? So we followed what the example was on the other places.
So in essence, we're kind of aligning with the contiguous areas, New York. And Quebec, obviously not, well,
We'll be
Ontario's.
behind New York. We'll be
2 years.
a couple or 3 years behind New York.
I would say that truing with New York is probably the best path forward, because you can technically import seed from Canada, but there are additional requirements, phytosanitary requirements, border requirements.
Well, it's iffy if you can get seeds
Right.
across the border.
And the smaller the package, the easier it is. As Senator Westwood said, there's 80,000 seed in a bag of corn. It's harder to get corn and soy across the border than it is to get, like tomato plants and carrot seed and some things like that. But technically, you can import it, but it's harder for commodity crops, larger.
Well, and the thought was we would follow New York as closely as we could, because if New York with 1 million acres, they aren't gonna get ignored. And what we wanted to do was push along
Sort of like the
with,
California auto
Yeah.
standard.
How much does each bag cost?
between $400 and $450 a bag, and a bag will do 2.5 acres. So if you've got 1,000 acres of corn, that's 100 just for the seed. That's not anything else you will do.
No tractor,
No
no.
truck, no
no
fuel, no
labor.
tractor, no anything. Just the seed alone is $160,000 to do 1,000 acres.
So other questions, I guess we got, well, the reason we have this is sort of that underlying.
Yeah.
I guess we could get into, discussion. Senator,
If the chair would entertain a motion, I would move to court pay. Well,
So our clerk is not clerking, he's
Clerk.
chatting. Clerk, we have a motion to move.
Clerk.
the-
And a second.
You the clerk of the works or just?
not the clerk who works.
Clerk who works.
We're voting on the money in the bill, right? The appropriations.
Yes.
There is,
That's what we're,
I'm voting on the fact that there are no appropriations in the bill.
You're not saying you're gonna vote for.
in other words, they entirely have.
I'm not entirely happy with all the provisions that are in the bill.
I suspect they walked carefully here with competing testimony, but I'm gonna, we need a second.
I see.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I missed it.
jump right.
I'm thinking we ought to probably put that stripe on the refrigerator. I have.
What, can't believe you have a bowl out in the hall.
What?
Can't believe you got a bowl sitting out in the hall,
I gotta take it home and
right
wash
by
it.
the door. Somebody could.
Clerk got the
Somebody could steal my
That's what I'm
Simon
saying.
Pierce bowl, which is very valuable.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, I'll go, I gotta leave now.
So the clerk is about to, unless there's no
Senator
discussion.
Ruth,
Yes.
Senator Lyons,
Yes,
Senator Birch,
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr's not here, Senator Westminster, yes, Senator Kitchen.
Yes.
The reporter.
And either be, we'll
I
put you
can do
down,
it.
you're the, ag,
Senator from Meg.
agriculture. So that, those-
While we're still on the record, I do want to thank you for getting up early to make that trip for my birthday. It was much appreciated.
you're welcome. Ted, why don't you have some? Thank you for having me for today.
You're welcome.
So I'm gonna,
Well,
since
yeah,
we've,
that way.
covered our agenda, I'm gonna adjourn to